Whose coat is that? The Mafia boss asked. And for a moment, even the rain seemed to stop. The yellow child-sized raincoat was clutched against the chest of a soaking wet waitress standing outside the Grand Crescent Hotel. Water streamed from her apron. Her tray lay overturned near the curb. One pocket of the coat hung slightly open, revealing the corner of an old phone wrapped in a damp paper receipt. Then the boss's eyes landed on a dark brown stain near the collar, and something inside him went completely still. 3 hours earlier, Emily Carter had been trying her hardest to become invisible. She'd spent most of her life practicing. At 32, she knew how to carry 6 champagne flutes without a sound, how to clear a table without interrupting a conversation, and how to smile before people could apologize for staring at her size. The Grand Crescent Hotel glittered like a palace that evening. Crystal chandeliers floated above hundreds of guests. Strings played near the ballroom staircase. Television crews moved through the lobby, gathering footage for the charity gala. Emily moved through all of it like furniture. Present, useful, forgettable. That was usually safest, especially when Vanessa Romano was around. Vanessa stood at the center of the ballroom, surrounded by cameras and donors, dressed in ivory silk, smiling the way some people held knives. "We have standards to maintain tonight," she said while reviewing the staff lineup. The words sounded polite. They always did. Her eyes traveled slowly from Emily's face to her waist before returning upward. Perhaps the front entrance isn't the best placement for everyone. Several employees looked away. Nobody challenged her. Emily nodded like she always did. Of course. The answer came automatically. It always did. Because arguing never changed anything. Because women like Vanessa never needed to raise their voices to make someone feel small. An hour later, rain began striking the ballroom windows. Guests laughed over expensive wine while thunder rolled somewhere above Manhattan. Emily was carrying a silver tray of untouched desserts toward the service corridor when she noticed a child standing alone near the emergency exit. A little girl, maybe 10 years old, yellow raincoat, dark curls, no parents nearby, no security, no nanny. The girl wasn't crying. Somehow that made it worse. She looked like someone trying very hard not to cry. Emily slowed. The child kept glancing over her shoulder toward the ballroom, not toward the crowd, toward one specific area near the stage where Vanessa was speaking. Then the girl noticed Emily watching. Their eyes met. Fear flashed across the child's face. Real fear, not childish anxiety, not embarrassment, the kind adults spend years learning to recognize. Emily opened her mouth. "Sweetie, are you?" But the girl shook her head sharply, almost like a warning. Then she disappeared through the emergency exit before Emily could take another step. The moment lasted less than 10 seconds. Yet it stayed with her. Through dinner service, through speeches, through applause, through every tray she carried afterward. Because something about that look felt familiar. Years ago, another frightened child had looked at Emily the same way. And Emily had stayed silent. She still dreamed about it sometimes. By 11 o'clock the storm had become violent. Wind rattled the hotel glass. Guests prepared to leave. Staff rushed to finish cleanup. Then a small folded paper crane appeared beneath Emily's dessert tray. No name, no note, just blue paper creased by tiny hands. Emily stared at it for several seconds before carefully slipping it into her apron pocket. She didn't know it yet, but somewhere above the ballroom, security footage would later show the little girl in the yellow coat placing that paper crane on Emily's tray before vanishing from camera view forever. The paper crane felt heavier than paper should have felt. Emily stood beneath the hotel awning while rain hammered the street, her fingers wrapped around the damp folds inside her apron pocket. 2 security guards had quietly moved closer, not touching her, not accusing her, not yet, but close enough to make it clear she wasn't free to leave. Across the marble entrance, television crews were packing equipment into waterproof cases. Guests hurried toward waiting cars beneath umbrellas held by hotel staff. Nobody looked at Emily for long. They looked at the yellow coat instead. The coat had become the center of gravity. Vanessa Romano approached with measured elegance, one hand resting lightly against her silver clutch. Even in the storm, she looked untouched. "This is obviously a misunderstanding," she said softly. Her voice was warm enough to sound kind. "Emily, dear, if there's something you forgot to mention, now would be the perfect time." Emily recognized the trap immediately. Confessed to something vague. Make everyone comfortable. Become the problem so everyone else could stop asking questions. I already told you, she said. The girl gave me the coat. Vanessa smiled. Of course she did. The silence after those 4 words hurt more than an insult. Nearby, one of the guards received a call through his earpiece. His expression changed. We found footage. Vanessa turned immediately. Too quickly. Emily noticed it because she spent her life noticing things nobody else cared about. The guard brought up security video on a tablet. Rain reflected off the screen. The footage showed the service hallway from earlier that evening. The little girl in the yellow coat appeared at the edge of frame. Then Emily. Then static. 3 seconds of distortion. After that, only Emily remained visible. Convenient, Vanessa murmured. The camera must have malfunctioned. The Mafia boss said nothing. He took the tablet, watched the clip once, then again. His thumb paused on the exact moment before the distortion began. Emily saw it too. A flash of black. Someone crossing the hallway. Not visible long enough to identify. Just long enough to interrupt the recording. Play it slower, the boss said. The guard obeyed. Static. Flash. Static. Gone. The boss handed the tablet back without comment. But Emily noticed him take a photo of the screen with his own phone. Quietly. Like a man placing a piece on a chessboard. Nobody else seemed to care. The hotel doors opened behind them. A cold gust of air carried the smell of coffee from the lobby cafe. One of the valets emerged holding a lost and found bin. Found this near the east elevators, he called. Inside were umbrellas, scarves, and a plastic hospital bracelet. Emily froze. The bracelet belonged to the girl. She knew because she'd seen it when the child reached into her pocket hours earlier. White band, pink lettering, tiny cartoon star. That wasn't there before, Emily said. Several heads turned toward her. Vanessa's smile tightened. You seem remarkably certain about a child you've never met. Emily ignored her. The bracelet was on her wrist when she gave me the coat. The boss finally looked directly at Emily. Not with trust. Not with suspicion. With calculation. How do you know? He asked. Emily swallowed. Because she kept pulling her sleeve down to hide it. The rain continued falling. Somewhere in the lobby, a grandfather clock struck midnight. Then an old phone inside the coat suddenly lit up for the first time, and across its cracked screen appeared a notification that simply read, "Don't let Vanessa find this phone." Nobody moved. The glow from the cracked phone painted pale blue light across wet fingers and rain-soaked fabric. For one suspended second, the storm outside seemed quieter than the silence beneath the hotel awning. Vanessa recovered first. That could have come from anyone, she said lightly. Children borrow phones all the time. Her smile arrived half a second too late. Emily noticed because she spent her life noticing things people thought she wouldn't. The Mafia boss took the phone without looking at Vanessa. He didn't unlock it, didn't rush, didn't demand answers. He simply studied the screen until the notification faded away. Then he turned the device over in his hand. "This isn't my daughter's phone," he said. The statement landed like a stone in still water. Vanessa exhaled almost imperceptibly. One of the guards relaxed his shoulders. But Emily felt something tighten instead. "No," she said carefully. "It isn't." Several heads turned toward her. She hated that. Hated being the center of attention. Hated the way her voice sometimes caught when too many people looked at her at once. But she kept going anyway. The girl knew that. The boss's eyes settled on her. Not warm. Not cold. Measuring. "Explain." Emily swallowed. Rainwater dripped from the ends of her hair onto the concrete. When she gave me the coat, she checked the pocket first. Twice. She pointed toward the yellow raincoat. Like she was making sure something was still there. Vanessa laughed softly. "Emily, you've had a long night." There it was again. The polite voice. The gentle dismissal. The suggestion that she was emotional, confused, overwhelmed. Emily had heard versions of it her entire life. Too sensitive. Too dramatic. Too much. "Maybe," Emily said. "But I'm not wrong." Another silence followed. The dangerous kind. The boss finally handed the phone to a security specialist standing nearby. "See what you can recover." The man nodded and disappeared inside. A few minutes later, they moved into a private conference room off the lobby. Thick carpet. Dark walnut table. Coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Rain tapping against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Emily sat at the far end, still holding the paper crane inside her pocket. She could feel the damp folds pressing against her palm. Across the room, Security technicians pulled footage from multiple cameras. Screen after screen flickered to life. Hallways, elevators, service entrances. The girl appeared at 8:14 p.m. near the ballroom. Then at 8:19, near the east elevators. Then nothing. What about between 8:19 and 8:31? The boss asked. A technician frowned. There's a gap. A malfunction? Vanessa offered. The technician hesitated. Not exactly. The room grew quieter. He enlarged the timeline. 12 minutes missing. Not corrupted. Removed. Somebody had manually deleted the footage. Nobody spoke. The boss took a photograph of the screen. Another silent piece placed somewhere inside his mind. Emily's gaze drifted toward the yellow coat hanging over a chair. Something caught her attention. Not the stain near the collar. Not the hospital bracelet. A tiny white tag sewn into the inner seam. Wait. Her voice came out softer than she intended. Can I see that? Vanessa immediately answered before anyone else could. I'm sure that's unnecessary. Too fast. Too smooth. Emily looked at the boss instead. He gave a single nod. A guard brought her the coat. Emily turned the sleeve inside out and found the tag. Dry cleaner markings. Date stamped in black ink. She stared at it, then stared harder. That's impossible. What is? The boss asked. Emily lifted the tag with trembling fingers. The coat was cleaned yesterday morning. Her eyes rose slowly toward Vanessa. But the hospital bracelet attached to it is dated 6 days ago. The room stayed quiet for several seconds after Emily spoke. The dry cleaning tag seemed absurdly small beneath the conference room lights, yet nobody looked away from it. Yesterday. 6 days. 2 dates that refused to belong to the same story. Vanessa was the first to recover. She folded her hands neatly on the walnut table and offered a sympathetic smile that somehow made Emily feel even larger in her wet uniform and hotel-issued name tag. I'm sure there's a simple explanation, Vanessa said. Dry cleaners make mistakes all the time. Tags get switched. Records get mixed. We shouldn't place too much weight on speculation. The board members around the table nodded. Not because they believed her, because believing her was easier. Across from Emily, a gray-haired attorney adjusted his glasses. Miss Carter, he said politely, you work double shifts, correct? Emily nodded. Sometimes. Long hours. Stress. Exhaustion. You were carrying trays all evening. She knew where this was going. Yes. Then perhaps we should be careful before building theories from fragmented observations. Fragmented observations. It sounded kinder than calling her unreliable. The result was the same. Emily lowered her eyes briefly to the coat lying on the table. Not in surrender. In concentration. She could still smell rain on the fabric. Beneath that, something else. Expensive perfume. Floral. Sharp. Familiar. Vanessa continued speaking. The important thing is finding the child. We all appreciate Emily's concern. The way she said Emily's name felt like being patted on the head. But perhaps we should allow professionals to handle the investigation from here. A security supervisor slid a typed statement across the table. If you could sign this, Miss Carter. Emily looked down. The statement summarized her interaction with the girl. Except it wasn't accurate. According to the document, the child appeared distressed and confused. According to the document, she may have mistakenly handed over personal belongings. According to the document, there was no indication she feared anyone. Emily read it twice. The room waited. The attorney smiled patiently. Just routine procedure. The silence stretched. Somewhere beyond the conference room walls, a dishwasher rumbled in the hotel kitchen. A service cart squeaked across tile. Ordinary sounds from a world that suddenly felt very far away. Emily picked up the pen. Several people visibly relaxed. Then she set the pen back down. No, the word wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The attorney blinked. Excuse me. Emily pushed the paper forward. That's not what happened. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the yellow coat. She wasn't confused. Vanessa's smile dimmed slightly. Emily, nobody is accusing you of anything. I know. Emily looked directly at her. But I'm not signing something that's false. The room cooled by several degrees. At the far end of the table, the Mafia boss remained silent. He hadn't interrupted once. Hadn't defended her. Hadn't attacked anyone. Yet Emily noticed something. Every time someone spoke for her, his eyes shifted toward them. Every time someone tried to simplify her account, he wrote something in a small black notebook beside his phone. The security specialist entered carrying a tablet. We recovered partial metadata from the deleted footage. Vanessa's shoulders stiffened almost invisibly. Most people missed it. Emily didn't. The specialist placed the tablet on the table. The deletion occurred at 8:26 p.m. The attorney frowned. And the specialist zoomed in. Whoever removed the footage used a staff access credential. Vanessa immediately answered. Hundreds of employees have access. Too fast. Again, the specialist hesitated. Actually, no. He enlarged the record. A single access ID appeared on screen. Not a name, just a designation. Executive Event Management. Emily's eyes dropped instinctively to the luxury perfume lingering on the yellow coat, and for the first time she realized it was the exact same scent Vanessa had been wearing all night. The perfume lingered in the room long after nobody wanted to acknowledge it. Not because it proved anything. Not yet. But because scent was difficult to argue with. It existed or it didn't. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, perfectly composed. I attend nearly every event connected to this foundation, she said. If my perfume transferred onto a coat at some point, that hardly makes me a suspect. Her tone was calm, reasonable, the kind of answer that made everyone feel foolish for asking the question. Several board members nodded immediately. The attorney beside her folded his hands. I agree. We're drifting into assumptions. Across the table, the Mafia boss said nothing. His silence had become the heaviest object in the room. Emily watched him studying the yellow coat again. Not the stain, not the bracelet, the sleeve, the pocket, the tiny details everyone else seemed eager to rush past. The security specialist cleared his throat. We recovered something else from the phone. Every eye shifted toward him. He placed the old device on the table. Its cracked screen reflected the conference room lights like fractured ice. Most of the contents were erased, he said. Photos, messages, call history. Vanessa immediately seized on it. Then whoever had the phone before the child probably deleted everything. Again, too fast, too ready. Emily felt that familiar pressure building behind her ribs. The pressure she always felt when powerful people started deciding what reality should look like. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the damp blue paper crane. Wait. The room turned toward her. She carefully unfolded the paper for the first time. The folds were soft from rainwater. Delicate. Child-sized. Something slipped out onto the table. A tiny memory card no larger than her thumbnail. Nobody spoke. Even the security specialist looked surprised. Emily stared at it. She hid it. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Inside the crane, the specialist inserted the card into his laptop. Files appeared almost immediately. Not many. Just one audio recording. 43 seconds long. Nobody moved while it loaded. The sound began with static. Then a child's breathing. Quick. Nervous. Followed by voices in the background. One belonged to Vanessa. The room recognized it instantly. But it wasn't a confession. It wasn't a threat. It was worse because it sounded normal. The paperwork needs to be finalized before he reviews the trust, Vanessa was saying. Another voice answered. Male. Older. And the medical authorization? Already handled. Silence followed. Then the recording ended abruptly. The room remained still. 43 seconds. That was all. Not proof. Not enough to destroy anyone. Vanessa recovered quickly. This is ridiculous. She laughed softly. Medical authorization? I help manage charitable healthcare initiatives. Half this foundation deals with medical paperwork. It was a good explanation. A believable explanation. Several people visibly relaxed. The attorney nodded. Exactly. But the Mafia boss wasn't looking at Vanessa anymore. His gaze had settled on the hospital bracelet lying beside the phone. He picked it up slowly. Turned it over. Once. Twice. Then stopped. Emily saw the change immediately. Not anger. Not certainty. Recognition. What is it? The attorney asked. The boss didn't answer right away. His thumb traced the faded cartoon star printed on the plastic band. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet enough that everyone leaned forward to hear it. My daughter stopped using this hospital 3 years ago. Nobody breathed. The bracelet remained suspended between his fingers. So why? He asked without looking at Vanessa. Was one printed last week under her name? Nobody answered him. The hospital bracelet remained on the table between the old phone and the damp paper crane, looking small enough to be meaningless. Yet somehow it had become the most dangerous object in the room. The Mafia boss set it down with deliberate care. Not anger. Not force. Care. That frightened people more. Vanessa folded her arms. There are administrative errors in hospitals every day. Her voice stayed smooth. Surely we're not building a conspiracy around a plastic wristband. He didn't look at her. He looked at the security specialist. Get me the admission record. The man nodded immediately. The room fell silent again. 1 minute passed. Then 2. Rain tapped against the conference room windows in steady waves. Somewhere beyond the wall, a freight elevator hummed. Someone rolled a housekeeping cart across marble flooring. Ordinary sounds. Small sounds. The kind that made the quiet inside the room feel even heavier. Emily sat very still. Her wet apron had begun to dry stiff against her uniform. The blue paper crane rested beside her hand. Nobody had asked about her anymore. That changed when the boss finally spoke. Miss Carter. Emily looked up. Yes, sir. Why didn't you leave? The question surprised everyone, including her. What? Most people would have handed over the coat and walked away. His voice remained calm. You didn't. Emily glanced down at the yellow raincoat. For a moment she thought about lying. Something simple. Something easy. Instead she told the truth. Because she looked scared. Vanessa gave a faint sigh. Children get scared. Emily shook her head. Not like that. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. She wasn't scared of being lost. Nobody interrupted. She was scared of not being believed. The room became very still. Emily swallowed. I know the difference. The boss watched her for several seconds. Then he nodded once. Not agreement. Not trust. Just acknowledgement. A phone vibrated against the conference table. The security specialist checked the screen. His expression changed immediately. We found the admission file. Vanessa reached for her water glass. Good. There's a problem. The specialist connected his tablet to the room monitor. A hospital record appeared. Child patient. Female. Same date as the bracelet. Same name as the boss's daughter. The room leaned forward. Emergency cardiac evaluation, the specialist read. Authorized by legal guardian. The boss's face didn't change. Continue. Guardian signature on file. Another page appeared. Then another. Emily didn't understand most of the medical language. She didn't need to. What she noticed was the signature block. One line. One name. Vanessa Romano. Nobody spoke. Vanessa set down her glass. Of course my name is there. She smiled carefully. She was ill. He was traveling. Someone had to sign. Reasonable. Sensible. Almost convincing. The boss still didn't react. I wasn't informed. Vanessa blinked. Just once. You were busy. There it was. Small. Tiny. Barely visible. But Emily saw it. The first crack. Because people tell the truth differently than they tell lies. Truth arrives quickly. Lies arrive after calculation. The boss noticed it too. She knew he did. Because he reached for another page instead of arguing. Hospital billing records. For visits over 6 months. Follow-up appointments. Medication reviews. Additional testing. Thousands of dollars billed through a private foundation account. The foundation Vanessa controlled. The room felt colder. That's impossible, one board member whispered. The boss stared at the dates. For visits. 6 months. For separate opportunities to tell him. For separate times nobody had. His gaze drifted toward the old phone, then the bracelet, then the coat. Piece by piece. Thread by thread. A picture was forming. Not of his daughter. Not of Emily. Of himself. Of a father who had somehow missed 6 months of his own child's life. And for the first time that night, he began to wonder if the person he'd trusted most was not the person he'd failed to see at all. The realization settled over the room slowly, like winter creeping across glass. Nobody spoke for several seconds after the hospital records disappeared from the monitor. The rain had weakened outside, but droplets still slid down the conference room windows in thin silver lines. The Mafia boss closed the file. Not slammed. Closed. Carefully. That frightened Vanessa more than anger would have. She knew him well enough to understand the difference. Angry men made mistakes. Quiet men collected them. It's late, she said, forcing a small smile. Everyone is exhausted. We should continue this tomorrow with proper counsel present. Nobody moved. The boss reached for the yellow coat instead. His fingers brushed the sleeve where the dry cleaning tag still hung. One more thing. His voice remained calm. Vanessa's smile tightened. Of course. He stood and crossed toward his side. Credenza where coffee service had been abandoned hours earlier. Half-empty cups. Stir sticks. Folded napkins. The remains of a very expensive evening beginning to unravel. My daughter carried this coat for almost 3 years, he said. She hated replacing things. The room listened. She kept everything in the left pocket. He turned toward Vanessa. You know that, don't you? A simple question, harmless on the surface. Vanessa answered immediately. Yes. Too immediately. Emily felt something catch in her mind. The same feeling she got when a customer gave the wrong table number or when an order ticket didn't match the food on the tray. Small. Easy to miss. But wrong. The boss nodded once. Interesting. He returned to the table. Because the left pocket has a hole. Silence. Vanessa's eyes flickered toward the coat before she could stop herself. There it was. Tiny. Barely visible. Emily saw it. So did the boss. My daughter stopped using that pocket last year, he continued. Everything went into the right one. Nobody spoke. Vanessa recovered quickly. I haven't inspected a child's raincoat recently. A good answer. Better than most people could have managed. But the damage was already done. The boss sat back down. Security. One of the guards stepped forward. Bring me the hotel access records. 10 minutes later, another file appeared on the monitor. Electronic key usage. Employee entries. Service corridors. Executive access points. Emily watched rows of timestamps scroll down the screen. Most of it meant nothing to her. Then she noticed something. Stop. Every head turned. She almost wished she hadn't spoken. Almost. What is it? The boss asked. Emily leaned forward. Go back. The technician scrolled upward. There. 8:23 p.m. Executive Event Management Access. East Corridor. 8:24 p.m. Same credential. VIP Elevator. 8:25 p.m. Same credential again. Emily pointed at the screen. That's impossible. The attorney frowned. Why? Her fingers tightened around the damp paper crane. Because those locations are on opposite sides of the hotel. She looked at the technician. It takes at least 4 minutes to walk between them. The room grew quiet again. The technician checked the hotel map, then checked the timestamps. His expression shifted. She's right. Vanessa looked away first. Just briefly. Toward her phone. The movement lasted less than a second. The boss noticed. He noticed everything now. A vibration buzzed softly against the conference table. Vanessa's phone. Nobody touched it. The screen lit up. One incoming message. No name attached. Only a number. But the preview appeared before the screen darkened. Did she find the room? Nobody breathed. Vanessa grabbed the phone too quickly. Much too quickly. The motion echoed through the room louder than any shout. The boss didn't ask for the phone. Didn't accuse her. Didn't raise his voice. He simply looked toward Emily. For the first time that night, not as a witness. Not as a suspect. As someone whose observations kept surviving every attempt to dismiss them. Across the table, Vanessa slowly realized the same thing, and the color drained from her face when she understood that the waitress she had left standing in the rain was no longer standing there alone. Vanessa's hand remained wrapped around her phone long after the screen went dark. Nobody asked who had sent the message. Nobody needed to. The question was already hanging in the room like smoke. The Mafia boss rose from his chair. Not abruptly. Not dramatically. Slowly enough that every person at the table watched him. Move this upstairs, he said. To the ballroom. Several board members exchanged confused glances. Now, one asked. Now. 30 minutes later, the charity gala had become something else entirely. The orchestra had stopped playing. Donors stood in clusters beneath crystal chandeliers. Television crews that had been packing equipment suddenly unpacked it again. The ballroom that had celebrated generosity a few hours earlier now felt like a courtroom. Emily stood near the back wall. Her damp apron had finally dried. Her name tag still hung slightly crooked. Nobody offered to straighten it. She didn't need them to. On the stage, the yellow raincoat rested on a long table beside the hospital bracelet, the old phone, the paper crane, and a stack of records thick enough to bend beneath their own. Wait. The evidence looked strangely ordinary. Plastic. Paper. Fabric. Small things. The kind people ignored until they couldn't. Vanessa remained composed. Remarkably composed. This is unnecessary, she told the crowd. A frightened child ran away. We are turning confusion into spectacle. Some people wanted to believe her. Emily could see it in their faces. Believing Vanessa meant believing the world still made sense. The boss looked toward the security specialist. Play it. The ballroom speakers crackled. The recovered audio recording echoed through the room. Vanessa's voice. The conversation about paperwork, medical authorization, trust documents. Not enough to destroy her. Not by itself. Then another file appeared on the giant screen overhead. The security team had recovered more from the memory card hidden inside the paper crane. Not audio. Video. Grainy. Shaky. Recorded by a frightened child holding a phone inside a backpack. The image jumped across the screen. Hotel hallway. Elevator. A glimpse of Vanessa speaking with a man in a gray suit. The foundation attorney. He can't know before it's finalized, Vanessa said. The video froze several times. The sound distorted, then returned. The guardianship amendment goes through next week. The ballroom became silent. Completely silent. Vanessa's face lost color for the first time. That proves nothing, she said. Her voice sounded smaller now. Play the next file, the boss said. Emily felt her heart pound. The security specialist opened a scanned document recovered from the phone backup. An original trust agreement appeared beside a revised version. Hundreds of people stared at the screen. Most would never understand the legal language. They didn't need to. One section glowed red where changes had been made. Custodial authority. Medical authority. Asset oversight. Every revision shifted power toward the same person. Vanessa Romano. The crowd murmured, then stopped when the boss raised a hand. Silence returned instantly. Emily looked toward him and saw something she hadn't seen all night. Pain. Not rage. Pain. The kind that arrives when a truth reaches somewhere pride cannot protect. His eyes remained fixed on the document. I signed this, he said quietly. Nobody answered. I signed it because I trusted the people who put it in front of me. Across the ballroom, several board members lowered their eyes. Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You were busy. I was helping. The words sounded weak now. Emily stepped forward before fear could stop her. Then why did she hide the phone? Every head turned. Emily's voice trembled slightly. She kept going anyway. Why did she hide the memory card? Why did she leave the coat? Why did she ask a stranger to protect it? Nobody answered. Not Vanessa. Not the attorney. Not the board. Because there was no good answer. Only the truth standing in the middle of the room where everyone could finally see it. The boss lowered his gaze to the yellow raincoat. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. Then he removed a folded document from the evidence stack, placed it carefully on the table in front of Vanessa, and looked toward his longtime attorney. His voice was calm enough to make several people shiver. Call my attorney. The attorney didn't hesitate. He stepped away from the stage and made the call immediately. Nobody tried to stop him. Not after what they had seen. Not after what they had heard. The ballroom remained frozen beneath the chandeliers. Hundreds of people stood in absolute silence while Vanessa stared at the folded document lying in front of her. For the first time that evening, she looked alone. Truly alone. Not abandoned. Exposed. The board meeting lasted less than 40 minutes. By the end of it, Vanessa had been removed from every position connected to the foundation. Her access privileges were revoked. Her authority over financial accounts was suspended. Independent auditors were called before sunrise. The foundation attorney who helped draft the altered documents resigned before anyone could ask him to. By morning, federal investigators would receive copies of every amended record. No shouting. No dramatic arrests. Just signatures, votes, and consequences. The kind that lasted. The engagement ended the same way. Quietly. The ring remained on the table long after Vanessa left the ballroom. Nobody followed her. Nobody defended her. The system she had used to control others finally turned around and examined her. The Mafia boss never watched her walk away. His attention had already moved elsewhere. Toward the damage that could still be repaired. Toward the people he had failed to see. The missing child was found shortly after dawn. A retired caregiver who had once worked for the family recognized the girl's face from news alerts and contacted authorities. She had been staying in a small lakeside cabin 2 hours north of the city. Safe. Frightened. Waiting. Emily was standing near the hotel entrance when the black SUV returned. She had changed into dry clothes borrowed from housekeeping. Her name tag was gone. The rain had finally stopped. Morning sunlight reflected from puddles along the curb. The vehicle door opened. A small figure burst forward before security could react. The girl ran straight past everyone. Past the lawyers. Past the board members. Past her father. She wrapped both arms around Emily's waist and held on with everything she had. Emily closed her eyes. For a moment, she couldn't speak. Neither could the room. The child finally stepped back and looked up at her. You kept it. Emily smiled through wet eyes. I promised. The yellow raincoat was folded over her arm. The same coat that had made people suspect her. The same coat that had left her standing alone in the rain. The same coat that carried a bracelet, a memory card, a phone, and a truth nobody wanted. The girl took it gently and placed it over Emily's shoulders. Not because Emily needed warmth. Because everyone needed to see it. Cameras captured the moment. Board members saw it. Hotel staff saw it. The people who had watched her get pushed outside saw it too. Across the entrance, the Mafia boss stood completely still. Then he did something far more difficult than writing a check. He turned toward the hotel management. Pull every employee payroll record for the last 3 years. Several executives blinked. Sir. Everyone. His voice stayed calm. If hours were stolen, fix them. If tips were withheld, return them. If complaints disappeared, find them. If someone was punished for telling the truth, correct it. Nobody argued. He looked toward Emily. That starts today. A week later, Emily's mother's medical bills had been transferred into a legitimate assistance program supervised by independent attorneys. Not favors. Not charity hidden in shadows. Proper protection. Proper documentation. Proper dignity. Emily kept her job only long enough to finish her final scheduled shift. After that, she accepted a position overseeing community outreach for the reorganized foundation. Not because she needed saving. Because she knew what it felt like when nobody listened. On her first evening there, long after the reporters had gone home, she sat alone in a quiet office with a cup of hot coffee and the old phone resting beside a framed photograph of her mother. Outside, city lights glowed through the window. Inside, everything was still. A soft knock came at the door. The Mafia boss stepped inside. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, he glanced at the old phone and asked, "Why did you stay involved?" Emily looked down at the worn device that had changed everything. Then she gave the simplest answer she had. Because the truth was scared and nobody else was listening. The boss lowered his eyes for a moment. And in the silence that followed, it was clear that power had lost, truth had won, and the woman once left standing in the rain had finally been heard.